My name is Jeremy Walton, and this is the Cinematography of Dune Part 2. Let's go! I don't want to waste any time. I think enough info has come out to make this video. So if you're into cameras, lenses, riding sandworms, then here we go. The film we're talking about is the 2024 film Dune Part 2, directed by Denis Villeneuve and cinematography by Greg Fraser. Like always, let's start with the cameras. On IMDb under details, we have the Arri Alexa 65 and the Alexa Mini LF. That's probably not a huge surprise, but the choice in what cameras to use wasn't that simple. They started asking themselves philosophical questions. Should they shoot Part 2 on film? The world is bigger, it's evolved new characters. How can they distinguish between the two films? We decided to keep the fundamental through line of large sensor Alexa cameras, but to combine Alexa 65 with Alexa Mini LF and shoot the whole thing spherical. That kept our options open for the IMAX version, and we felt that 65mm with the Mini LF was a good combo. You probably also heard the term IMAX or filmed for IMAX when you saw any kind of marketing or trying to select which theater to go to. I'm sure some people are confused, especially because not too long ago Oppenheimer came out and you heard shot with IMAX film cameras. A lot of terms get thrown around, especially because IMAX certified digital cameras like the Alexa 65 and Mini LF are referred to as IMAX cameras. If you're interested at all with what they did for Oppenheimer, I did a video all about it, I'll link it below. Just remember, Dune Part 2 was shot digitally and Oppenheimer was shot on film. Although, in only 12 cinemas worldwide, Dune Part 2 will have a 1570 screening in IMAX theaters, which is on film, so you can shoot digitally and end up having a 1570 film print. If you want to learn more, especially about what the filmmakers did for Part 1 of Dune, check out the Look of Dune digital to film to digital so you can get a better understanding about the process. Here's a quick little recap of why they added film to digital. We tested acquiring on digital and then putting it out to film, then scanning the film back in. We did test and it was night and day what it gave the film. I personally saw this film on IMAX Laser. If that's all you have in your neighborhood, don't worry. It's still fantastic. I was actually off to the left a tad and damn, I think I sat a little too close to one of the speakers. The bass was over the top in a good way. This is what Jeremy Fee, general manager at IMAX Melbourne, has to say about IMAX Laser. We're all massive film fans here at IMAX and we love 1570, but the digital 4K laser is to me the most important piece of equipment that we own. In my opinion, it revolutionized and saved the IMAX industry. Fortunately for me, 2 of the 12 theaters showing the 1570 film print are in my backyard. I will be going for a second viewing. Now, why did the filmmakers want to get this into an IMAX theater? We were trying to fulfill our desire to increase the audience's perception of this world. We didn't want bars top and bottom. We wanted to create the biggest immersive experience that we possibly could with the theaters that exist right now. Even watching it in IMAX Laser, it was definitely an immersive experience. You could feel the world they created, and I will get into all the little details that helped them achieve this goal. Fraser did have concerns having to shoot in so many different formats. He expressed his desire to shoot in one format, but that's the world we're living in. The Alexa 65 also gives creative freedom for the filmmakers, as Fraser explains. What I love about 65mm is that it removes restrictions for me, opening up so many more lens options. You can work with lenses originally designed for smaller formats, where you see parts of the glass that were never intended to be seen. It helps me dirty up the image and give it texture in ways you couldn't do with a smaller format. Here's another interesting comment he said about shooting with the Alexa 65. I have the flexibility to choose different parts of the frame, taking a 5K or 4.5K crop from the top right corner or bottom left so you're looking through the lens off center, with the left half of the image falling off to a blur while the right half is clean. That's something I haven't heard too many people talk about. What helps in this endeavor is the lens choices, which looks like it played an important role. What you probably have heard of is when people want to dirty up an image of a digital sensor. That was their goal. They used rehoused 1980s movie cams, combining them with rehoused Soviet-era glass supplied by Iron Glass, even additional lenses from Arri's Heroes collection. They helped create the texture I wanted, and the Soviet glass was especially well suited to what we're doing. We used them all in harmony effectively. The dirtiness or texture was also a physical presence. They were literally shooting in the desert, so it was a challenge to keep the sand from destroying the equipment. Sand eventually got everywhere, as the actors discussed in multiple interviews. But that's what happens when you shoot in the desert. the sand becomes part of the look. We tried to make sure that the audience could see that, and perhaps at times we probably went a little further than you ordinarily would just to make sure the camera reads it. This even fell onto the wardrobe department. Fraser has a distaste for, let's call it, the fresh, clean look of costumes or even actors that are supposed to have that lived-in look, or living in Arrakis. This was obviously apparent in Dune. The costume designs were incredible because they looked like they were an extension of each character. I'm personally drawn to design, to costume, to makeup, and to world building that has an element of grit. Because if you look around, the world is textured, the world is lived in. So even though we love talking about cameras and lenses, a lot more goes into creating a look. Let's not forget that. Part of my job is to make sure that as an audience member, you walk out of that cinema, in the case of Dune, being able to taste the sand in your teeth. If you haven't seen Dune yet, but have watched the trailer, you know there's this black and white look, which was actually infrared. It was a really subtle look to tweak the homeworld of Giedi Prime. They could have done something similar in post, but I think doing it in camera made a world of difference. I'm always a fan of doing things in camera, and looking back on Denis' work, he has mentioned that in-camera workflow many times. Arri does have a native monochrome camera, but they weren't available for the shoot. They ended up removing the IR filter from regular Alexa cameras. They just had to add a filter to block the visible light from the sensor. They had a problem, did some testing, and figured out a solution. I've been playing with infrared on digital cameras for the last 10 years. I did a test and said to him, we can get rid of all the visible light and shoot just with infrared light, and this is what it does to skin tones, what it does to the pupils, to the iris. It seemed like the perfect solve to Denis' great idea of this kind of sun that doesn't have any color. In almost every interview, riding a sandworm was talked about. We saw it from a distance at the end of part 1, so you knew it was coming for part 2. They tried to shoot those scenes in a way that was believable, in a way where you weren't thinking about the visual effects aspect, because sometimes visual effects can be distracting. This is tough because there's no reference to riding a sandworm. The filmmakers turned to snow skiing, avalanches, and surfers crashing through waves to help build a realistic look. We're trying to shoot that in such a way that it's believable and that it doesn't jar the audience. And the effort that goes into that is massive. That scene took us months to film. Months and months and months. And there were times and days where we didn't get that many shots done because we were striving for absolute perfection. You add sound design, the score, the lens choice, and you have something that works. A very memorable scene. Here's another important quote by Fraser that ties all this together. When you're shooting something larger than life, it's important, I think, to give the audience a grounding, because if you then suddenly start to become unreal with a situation that's unreal, I don't know, it's like it doesn't kind of work. I'd say this is one thing I noticed while watching Dune Part 2. It all feels grounded and real. When you talk about what's going on, it definitely feels like fantasy, but when you watch it on the big screen with the filming techniques they deployed, you really believe in this world. Or at least I did. A couple other things I thought was worth mentioning was the dusk and dawn for night. Yes, you heard that right, not day for night. Most day for night shooting is usually during the middle of the day. They wanted to go for that bright night feel like a full moon is lighting the desert. They did that in both part 1 and 2. These scenes were also shot with a very small crew. Not all $200 million movies need a huge crew for every scene. The right tool for the job and the right amount of crew for the scene. Part 2 became more intimate and emotional with the characters. They wanted to embody that with their shooting style as well. We're talking 10 to 12 crew with a few actors. We really capitalized on the fact that we could go from a small unit to a big unit, back to a small unit, all in the same day. I really hope you can go out and watch Dune Part 2. If you love filmmaking, I'm sure you'll enjoy something that this film brings to the table. I'm sure Dune 3 will happen. IMDb says it's been announced, but nothing official yet. It's being written right now, and when asked about it, I don't know exactly when I will go back to Arrakis. I might make a detour before just to go away from the sun. For my mental sanity, I might do something in between. I want to leave you with something Fraser said about his work and working with Denis that I think is a great foundation to filmmaking. It's very much a collaborative process. It's not the case that Denis wants me to put the camera there and use this lens. It's like, let's discover what the world is together. Let's find what this world is and make it happen. Well, there you have it, the cinematography of Dune Part 2. Hope you enjoyed the video. Hit that like button because there's definitely more on the way. Subscribe so you don't miss out. Leave a comment if you have questions. Until next time, it's a wrap.